welcome and thanks for coming. I have on my notes here, it's great to see students from the Front Street Writers Program and students from the Interlochen Center for the Arts Creative Writing Program, but I can't see you. So will you make mention of the fact that you're here? Can I hear you? Thank you. And I'd like to offer a special thanks to Francine Harris, the writer-in-residence this year, and to her partner, Carrie Woofter, the coordinator of the Front Street Writers Program. They both deserve very high praise for their continuing dedication to making this program the incredible experience it has been and continues to be for local young writers. What a pleasure to introduce Francine. Anyone who has spent time around her knows she's an amazing woman. I have yet to come away from any conversation with her when I didn't feel elevated. She's a woman who knows exactly who she is and exactly where she came from. In one of her poems, she says, "I'm pollen blown off the backs of butterflies in Detroit," an apt description of a writer who is at once fierce, yet is totally vulnerable to the world she navigates. Her poems are made of the music of language, but they are far more than mere sound poems. They are filled with sonic bursts of energy that lead us into deeper meaning and an understanding of our own humanity. Sometimes rereading them this week, I felt like I was listening to sermons delivered up by this remarkable woman who knows the grit of the road and the soft touch of the flower in the drainage ditch. In the lovely poem Sift, she writes, "This is just a bone song, but I'm here to tell you that all of her poems feel like bone songs to me. They are poems written by a woman of magnitude. Francine has horsepower. She has juice, or mojo, whatever you want to call it. Her poems come from what I call hard learning, rising up from place, that wild and beautiful throbbing center of Detroit, and then they find you and they stick you right where you sit. There is swagger in them and there is confession, and you will find brutal honesty and exquisite tenderness, all of which causes you to have your heart broken over and over, yet wanting it to happen again and again. I love being around Francine and thank her for the generosity of her spirit. I thank her for her devotion to teaching and for coming way up here to the cold north, even if she didn't have the right pair of boots to handle the 200 inches of snow coming our way. If you get a chance to meet her after the reading, look in her eyes. I think it was Emerson who said that the eyes are the headlights of the soul. And if that's true, you'll see a wild heart, a spirit that rides directly out of the pure desire to say it true. She sits you down and makes you listen, and all you want to do is tell her not to stop. Please welcome Francine Harris.
Oh my God. Thank you, Michael, for making me cry. And thanks to the National Writers Series for having me as part of this evening. I just want to say that it's such an honor to open for Nikki Giovanni. She is one of, if not the first poet that I read in high school that came alive for me. We had a lot of pretty standard classic stuff, but one thing Detroit's local libraries were good for was the work of the Black poets. With Broadside Press being there, they all, including my crappy school library, had a solid bookshelf of Black writers, and I really won't ever forget picking up Black Feeling, Black Talk, and how it seemed like my whole brain split open on those poems. So thank you, Ms. Giovanni, for triggering me. I'm forever indebted. I have 4 poems. The first is the first of a series I've been working on for a while now about my mom. It's not a poem I would normally read, but reading Chasing Utopia has me thinking about the personal language we use around family. So this is an attempt at a formal hustle to open that series, and it's written in my mother's voice. Dirty White Girl Story number 1, Mary Grace. At Cooley, I fenced boys and foiled strong moves with grace. The girls could fly but never knew how to lose with grace. And I was a tough girl, fought bruised and sword sore, dueled how we sparred under stars, took a cruise with grace. The schoolers couldn't stop me sacking prom queens, showed those reddened lips like me how we could ruse with grace. Back then I was tree-bound, a misfit good girl. In poodle skirts our hopes for girl blazed and fused with grace. I learned how to hold the liquor, not my tongue. Never ingenue, but took their sultry clues as grace. Then a sailor, and oh, he liked how I raised hell. Kicked up a storm wild enough to make us fools in grace. We married by an airport, roared with the planes, let him settle me with kids to raise and prove my grace. I spent my life kicking, never could sit still. When the cops came, I kicked them square in their blues for grace. Now rough shadows make the street corners cruel. No one spells my name strong, they don't like to use the grace. There's a girl in the attic who knows my name. When records skip, her voice cracks and slews to Mary Grace. When the sea says horses, it says horses, oh, I make horses. And I should say that this is also a persona poem. It's written in the voice of the sea. I wrote it shortly after the BP oil spill. The epigraph, she had horses who threw rocks at glass houses, Joy Harjo. When the sea says horses, it says horses? Oh, I make horses. I make horses out of flotsam and horses of oily condoms and horses of engine spatter. So horses mostly nasty, horses all confused, dizzy, spinning, imperiled carousel horses, unpainted, untagged horses, horses no one can use. I make warped horses and hobby horses, missing little horse handles. I make a good shoe horse, a fine, wobbling, drunken horse, but mostly horses with no hooves and horses too heavy to move. I used to make horses that could spit, horses that could buck, but oh now I make thin horses, gaunt and worn horses, horses full of silt and gill, ground up dusty sand horses, awash in empty saloon horses. I make horses too frail to stand upright and horses stuck inside horses. I make machines of horse and horse of brine and horse necks and missing hides. I make headless horses, tailless horses with no limbs to kick and comb. Horses? Oh, I make horses that fit into skulls of other horses, horses who can't lead blind horses. I make horses out of dreams, and horses I make horse without a rider, with no one snug inside the dimple of her back. She clomps off into ossuaries among all the horse hiss heads and horse haints. She's a banshee horse who neighs at tide, a heavy, heaving horse torso who stomps and drags and tangles the shore among the distended torsos of birds. I have a couple from the book. One is called Would Like to First Thank God. Okay, those are gone. Would like to first thank God. As if God wanted to be thanked, like God cared about thank you, like God didn't have a whole warehouse of thank yous God could pick up out of God's make me a thank you box whenever God wanted. As if God cared about your folded hands, God made those hands, God could make those hands fold up. Like God got you your contract, like God didn't have better things to do, God isn't, after all, the one who raised you, staying up nights, waiting to see if you get in before 2. The clock ticks and God is trying to decide whether or not to have the next hurricane, the way one may decide whether or not to have the soup. You must think God is codependent. God can take care of God's self. God has one foot out the door already because God is sick of your shit, I'll tell you what. Like God was sitting in the audience wearing God's sexiest dress that God bought just for this night, just because things have been tense between you and because God wanted you to know you're still the one God's always waiting for to come home with flowers and say, I'm sorry every once in a while, it wouldn't kill you. But tonight, God will take you standing up there on the mic thanking God before you thank your producers and give shout outs in code. Side projects. God understands. God's not jealous. God is just happy you remembered that you'd like to thank God. God's blushing now. This last poem I'll leave you with. It's a little bit longer. I wrote it actually, and I'm still writing it. The first time I visited Traverse City a couple years ago, I think I had a premonition that I might move here. So it actually is set in Horizon Books in their pretty awesome poetry section. It's called Choosing Poets Out of Town Like Choosing a Date. And there's an epigraph from a friend's band. Never use love in a song, but never as long, and always just as wrong. Pure horsehair. Number 1 reminds you of staring at video boxes and dreaming in New York. How you pack up all your black and white photographs and move to New York. Chop off all your hair instead of getting some dumb tattoo. His face is quarter cropped in the camera box, and you can imagine drinking with him by a dumpster. In the second poem, he mentions rats, and you think of the rats whose glare you tried to return in the subway, how it was like they were waiting for something. He's good at these words, and they look like sticky stars on the tops of New York skyscrapers. He is as wiry as the nervous boy who sat next to you for both semesters of Shakespeare, but it is like he is waiting for you to fall off the platform. No one makes such pretty discoveries this consistently. The you who would buy this book really wants to be lied to. Number 2 takes on rebellion, but renders it in the colors and 10 tunes of a circus. Corners. With her, you would take on new limbs. She reminds you of boys who never told you their secrets, but who would wear your eyeliner in public on a dare. You probably share the same myopia, but she is adjusted to the strain. You might both breathe hard at the same altitude in the Northwest, but in the misty mountain range, she knows how to swerve a squirrel on a winding road. She has a billy tuft of hair under her lip. It all seems metaphysical. She graffiti sketches flower bombs on warehouse walls and rides the ferry to Bainbridge to twirl fire with her friends on their organic farms. You'd buy her for the same reason you started hiking, for fear of the dirt. She might make your body wilt the right way, but she's also too good at making things. You'd both supine mumble at each other. There's a natural oat to her fingertips. She says, "Tell me," and doesn't mean it. It's your job to say it just right, so you leave the wild wheat in her eyes. But number 3? Well, number 3 lives in Alaska. His picture makes you sad. He reminds you of the men you shot pool with in Phoenix, who rented rooms by the week, who only stopped smiling long enough to get down a shot, who tried hard not to mention their ex-wives, who tucked in their black rock band t-shirts, whom you didn't date and who didn't ask. In their motel rooms, legal papers littered their shelves propped up by cinder blocks. You could always smoke in their rooms. His name is Joseph. His hair is parted asymmetrically, which seems to have something to do with what you've already lost and what you think you'll never find again. Of lake towns, like this one, where women's bellies emerge and slip out from under not-so-feminine khaki, of women who barely flick an eye over their Velcro dress straps, this one walks the cold beach, but the fugue is soft. Joseph, the babies his book wants to seep from young girls in their pine-tall stances, the men expectant warriors who hold up their women in line for coffee, the perfume of wide-band miniskirts washed down the sandstone wall. Joseph, lay back Alaska, run through its strong bays. The couples here bow to the weather. In summer, they share gelato from a green cup, but in winter, they will sip ice from one another's teeth. Someday, visit yourself here with me in our new town. The cold doesn't seem to bother you, so I think we could love anything. The setting sun will cut up these women's mouths, and then we can set it all out to freeze. We could carry our guns together. We would stink of the smoke from burning the weekly trash. Our bodies would grow hair underwater, and the contrast would curl into seaweed and sharks, which you would skin, and lay the bones into flaccid bells. Clink, to Alaska missing its scales. Before skin could smoke, he might find a wolf under my knees, and I might be wearing his pants. Memories would ellipse and slap at our eyelids. We would snore and tell no one to tell. Joseph with the piercing Alaska yes. Our feet are turning white. Thank you.
Tonight's special guest for an evening in conversation with Nikki Giovanni is Lee Haber. This is a return visit to the National Writers Series for Haber. She was here in June as the guest host for the NWS event with Colin McCann. She has worked in the publishing industry for several years at houses such as Chronicle Books, Scribner, Hyperion, and Rodale. She is currently the books editor at O, the Oprah magazine. And now, Traverse City, what magnitude of blessing is to be bestowed on us this evening. Not only is there a poet at the National Writers Series, but there's this poet, Nikki Giovanni, who has for more than 40 years been turning her unapologetically compassionate eye to a moment and telling us what she sees, telling us bravely, sometimes impatiently, but always honestly. And in the telling over all these years, she has become a cultural prophet. If the purpose of art is to bring us to life and attach us to it, then Giovanni is an artist in italics with a capital A. God bless her, she's even an artist with an audience. Reading now from her website, her honors include the Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. Award for Dedication and Commitment to Service in 2009, 3 NAACP Image Awards for Literature in 1998, the Langston Hughes Award for Distinguished Contributions to Arts and Letters in 1996, as well as more than 20 honorary degrees from national colleges and universities. She has been given keys to more than a dozen cities. That is damn cool for a poet. Giovanni understands that for poetry to live, it needs to be heard, so she reads it all over the place, even in our small northern town, right now. Please join me in welcoming the deeply honorable Nikki Giovanni.
You know, they laugh about it, but there's not really much you can do with a key to a city. And a long time
Give us
ago,
an example.
A long time ago, when I was living in Harlem, I was, I don't know, 25, so I was cute. And I used to have...
Still pretty cute.
No, but you're cuter at 25 and 70. And I used to have a little Volkswagen, and I don't know what we know about Harlem, but you know Detroit, so there's never any place to park. And I had gone uptown to Miss Show's bookstore. It was on 125th and 7th. And I had gone up to the bookstore, and I still do that there. I illegally parked. And the policeman came up, and he was writing me a ticket. And I said, "Excuse me, sir, you can't give me a ticket." He says, you're illegally parked. And I said, "No, sir, I'm Sister of the Week. I can park any place." He said, "Oh, I didn't know. I didn't realize that."
Well, actually, there are a couple of car stories in your new book, aren't there?
Yeah, there are cars.
You purchased quite a few cars because of parking issues.
Well, Morgan owes me, and I was talking about him yesterday. His movie comes out. Morgan Freeman was my neighbor. I live in a great neighborhood. Morgan was next door. Cornell Dupree lived downstairs. Eugene McDaniel was a half a block over. Sidney Poitier was a good friend of McKell's, and that was on the corner there. I mean, it was an incredible. Adrian Rich.
Wow.
Came to our same cleaners. It was an incredible thing. But I was going to California for something. I had a 1960 Volkswagen, paid $600 for it. And that was real money. Today it would be a steal. And Morgan was working at the DMZ in the village, demilitarized zone. He was doing poetry in the village, right? And so he said to me, well, since you're going to California, can I use your car? And I was like, sure, take the car. Well, he got a call from New Haven to come up and audition for a show. And, actors are they're sweet and stuff, but they're very focused. And so...
On themselves.
Well, you know what I'm saying? And so Morgan, just parked the car and went on up to New Haven. He got the job. So I'm in California. He's in New Haven. The car, in New York is offside parking. So after a couple of tickets, they towed it away. So when I came back, the car wasn't there. And I was like, Morgan, where's the car? And he said, I don't know. I said, Morgan, I left you the car. He said, it was towed away, which it was. But getting it out of tow was more expensive than buying a new one. So
I can believe that.
And I got to tell you, because you all don't really know me, it's my first time here, but I'm a nice person. And I am. And so I was very calm. Morgan had a wife. Well, he had actually an ex-wife and a wife and a couple of kids, because, he went on to have a lot of kids. And I said, I'm not going to bother him. One day, if he does well, he'll do the right thing, right? Well, I saw Morgan, because it goes on and on. I ran into him in California a couple of years ago, and he was there with his friends and all of the actors and everything. And I was like, hi, Morgan, remember me? And so everybody looks, and, it's like really nice. You owe me a car. And I don't want a Volkswagen now. I want a Jaguar.
Still waiting for that one, right?
Well, I lobby his grandchildren, because I run and said, your granddaddy owes me a car. And so the granddaddy, you owe Nikki a car. And I want to send that guilt.
Now, you probably don't realize, unless you've read the book already, that Chasing Utopia may have something to do with beer. The title, Chasing Utopia,
Definitely.
right?
It definitely.
Beer and mom.
Mommy.
Well,
it was the death of, it was the death of my mother, and Mommy died really for no particular reason. I mean, she wasn't sick or something. Mommy just died. And I always think, and I still do, that Mommy died because she didn't want to bury my sister Gary. Gary had like a liver cancer that metastasized. And so, once they do things like that, the pancreas, the liver, it's not, it's just not going to work. And so I'm just trying to be a good daughter and a good sister, and I'm trying to prepare my mother for, what we will do, because I'm always going forward, But Mommy really just wasn't going to bury Gary. And I was out in Phoenix, Arizona, and I got a call from my sister who said, Mommy's in the hospital, she's dying. I said, I left home, she was fine. And it's like, why, and I thought that Gary had misunderstood that she was dying and couldn't fly, and just couldn't get to it. So it was, sad. I called her doctor, and I will say this to any of you out there now, you have to fire doctors. And so, oh, you do. And if you're a doctor, it's not personal. But no, I called her doctor, the man who admitted her, and I said, it's Nikki, Giovanni, my mom's in the hospital, what can you tell me? He said, she's dying. And I said, well, let me try this again. I'm in Phoenix, Arizona, and it's going to take me like a day to get home. And if you could just give me some information. He said, well, Nikki, she's dying. You want the truth, don't you? I said, well, actually, no. I'm not interested in the truth. Tell me she's not doing well. You're giving her a little Tylenol, but, she'll be here when don't tell me that. And I mean no disrespect here, but, I'm black, and so I know that a lot of times you have a white doctor, you get this attitude, maybe she can't pay. So I asked him, it's true. And so I asked, I said, is the problem that, you think we can't pay? He said, no, I know you can pay. I said, then I don't understand why, this is coming. He said, I just wanted to tell you what's going on. I said, I'll tell you what, let's do. You leave your bill on my mother's night table. And I'm going to be home at 11 o'clock, because I had called Lisa, who was my travel agent. So I'm going to be home at 11 o'clock. That means I'll be in the hospital probably about 11:40, because I do speed. And I said, and I want you to not be in the hospital, near her room, or any place else, because if I see you, this is going to be really, really ugly. And it's true. I don't tell people things like that. So I called a friend of mine who is a doctor, and I said, I have a problem. I said, Mommy's in the hospital. He said, I know. And I said, this fool who's treating her is an idiot. And he said, I know. Because he did. You know what they call the person that graduated last in med school?
What?
Doctor. So I asked him to go over and see about it. I said, I know I'm asking you to do something doctors don't normally do, but I want you to go see about Mommy. And so when I got there, he was there. He's a good friend. And he was standing in the door, and he said, Nikki, I have two things to tell you. One, you can't fire me. I said, okay. And he said, 2, she is dying. I said, why? He said, she doesn't want to live. She's just shutting down, which is what it was. And I laughed because one of the things that I'm going to do, you know, I'm not in a hurry, obviously, because I'm sitting here in Traverse City, but at some point, yeah, you know what I'm saying. But at some point, I'm going to get a day pass to heaven. My dad and Mommy and Gary went to heaven, I'm sure of that. My father and I both going to hell, but I'm going to get a day pass. I am.
Well, actually, that series of deaths, and there were other deaths that kind of prompted you to write the book, but before we get to that, Utopia is not the kind of utopia we usually think about. Chasing Utopia was
A beer.
a beer.
It is a beer.
It is a beer.
Well,
and you
I'm
did that in
sorry,
honor of your mom,
I
right?
didn't mean to do a long story, honey. Well, see, Mommy, every day that I knew her, and as her daughter, drank a beer. And, of course, Mommy had regular blood pressure. I wake up in the morning, and I will wake up in the morning. And the first thing I have to do is take a blood pressure pill, which is the Giovanni side of the family. They all are excitable, and we all have things. Mommy had perfect blood pressure. Mommy had, she didn't have to wear glasses. She had all of her teeth, right? None of which is true of either one of her daughters. Gary and I both wear glasses. We can't have see, and I can't hear anymore, you know, so, you know, I mean, it's an amazing thing. So she was healthy. I know it had to do with the fact that every day she drank a beer, because beer is a liquid. I'm a coffee drinker, and it's not a liquid, you know? And then when I got old, it's not. I mean, you know that. And as I got older, I became a wine drinker, which is not a liquid. So we knew that Mommy was, that's true, but we knew that Mommy wasn't doing well the first time. She was kind of sitting up, and I said, would you like a beer? She drank Bud Light. I said, would you like a beer? And she said no, and then it hit me, Mommy's dying, you know, because she never did not want a beer. Well, I was sad because my sister had cancer. Mommy died in June. She died on June 24th. My sister Gary died on August the 10th. My Aunt Ann died because Ann did everything that Mommy did. And so that's the truth. You'd have to know the family. But I'm sure that Ann just said, oh, you know, Yolan's dead, so we're dying now. And she died in October, you know. And I was a friend of Rosa Parks, and Rosa died at the end of October. So all of a sudden I went from being a baby in the family to being the adult, to being responsible. So I had things to do.
And Coretta Scott King.
Coretta and I weren't that close, but Coretta did die, and that was sad. But one of the, well, it was, but I mean, it wasn't, Rosa hurt me because she was a friend. She was.
Since most of us in this room probably never met Rosa Parks, what was that like?
Oh, she was, Sam, I've got, I have to start, it must be my age that makes me tell stories. I'm Southern, but I was recently, that's true. Let me answer this way. I was recently in Ghana, and I was in a crowd with Queen Juanita, who is a wonderful old woman. I have this weakness for old ladies. And it was just wonderful being with her. But when you're with a queen, people try to tell you how to behave. And so people were saying to me, now, you know, Queen Juanita is a queen, and we do this and we do this. And I said, wait, well, first of all, let me share. Queen Elizabeth II of England asked to meet me, and I agreed to do that, and I have met Queen Elizabeth II. But more, I was a friend of Rosa Parks. If I don't know how to treat a queen, I don't know who does.
Wow.
So that's, I mean, that's what, being in her presence, you know, and she's like any other old lady. It's true. If she doesn't, I mean, that's Queen Elizabeth and the rest of them. You're talking to them. What they don't want you to know, they're not going to tell you, so you know there's no point in asking.
Right.
And I do know that. You know, you never ask any of those kind of people. I don't ask Toni Morrison anything. I don't ask Maya, and we're all friends. If they want me to know, they will tell me. If they don't mention it, it's none of my business. And I just sit there and wait and drink. Well, with Maya, I drink, which is always a bad idea. No, Maya will drink you under the table.
Now, Nikki, so the book is called Chasing Utopia, and the subtitle under
she
it.
won't be, I have to call her now. You know I have to call her. I was talking about it.
And it's called Poems, but not all of the pieces in the book are poems. It's very memoirish. So what's the definition in your mind of a poem?
Oh, gosh. I do, a poem is the truth, is telling the truth. But can I finish so that they'll not think that I'm crazy? One of the, getting back to Utopia, there was nobody to do anything but me, and I'm now the oldest because Ann has a daughter, but she's way younger. So we had things to do, and I am responsible. That's what I'm, But after we got everything done, I was incredibly sad, and I'm a fan of sadness, by the way. So, no, if you're sad, hell, be sad. You know, all of that, be strong and stuff. I got done what I was supposed to, but then I was sitting on the deck, and I just over drinking, that's a fact. So I started the morning, because I lost everything that meant something to me at that point. And so I started the morning with Chardonnay, and then I'd move into a nice, Malbec, or, And so about 4 o'clock, my dog is being embarrassed. No, I mean, Alex is looking at me like, you have to stop drinking, Nikki. And so it went on for a while because I was sad, and I thought, well, I'm going to be sad, and then eventually I'll wake up one day and I'll still be sad, but it'll be time to move on. And so I thought, well, finally it's time to move on. But there was something that I needed that was left over, and I thought, what do I need to do to complete this thing with my mother? And you can't, I'm a mama's girl, so I won't live long enough to get over it. But I thought, Mommy drank a beer every day, so I should drink a beer. I don't like beer, and I never was a beer drinker. I cook with it, and I do. It's really good with your short ribs or your pig feet, your chitlins, put a, bottle of, yeah, really. Or right now, the pumpkin ales are out, so if, you're making, it's really great for things like that, but don't drink that stuff. So I thought, if I'm going to drink it, I should drink the best, right? And so I went to B&N, and I got, the beer book, and the #1 beer in the world is Utopia. And it's a Sam Adams beer. And it costs $350 a pint. So I called, it's not for everybody. That's the truth. But,
Did you like beer after that?
I haven't drunk it, but I called to get it, and my wine and beer guy, I live in a university town, said we never get it, and I called Bounty Hunter, you probably know Bounty Hunter, out in California. They sell everything, and we don't sell it because it's a beer. They gave me the Canadian website that I could pick it up, but one thing led to another, and that didn't work out. But and you guys may not know it because I'm having the impression that I'm probably having mostly a white audience, but if anytime. I mean, no disrespect, but every time something strange happens to you and you're black, everybody black knows when. I got a call from the CIA, so everybody in the audience black knows, oh, it was February, because they're not going to call you any other time. And so I thought, I need to go speak. They invited me to speak, and it was like, yeah, I'm a citizen, I'm going to speak anyway. But I thought, they can find Utopia, because it's the CIA. So Leon,
so you chased it and you found it.
Well, more or less, but men treat women badly at times. They don't mean to. But I asked the director, no, I mean, this wasn't like mean, just, the way men treat women. And so I asked the director, I said, I'm looking for Utopia. Do you think you can help me? And he did one of those, pat you on the shoulder, look deep inside yourself. I'm sure you'll find it. It's like, no, Leon. And so we went on, they took me to dinner, and the associate director was there, and I said to him, I'm trying to find a Utopia. You think you can help me? He said, I'm sure that if you just take the time. And I was like, I need somebody black. So I finally did. I found this black guy, and I was like, I'm trying to get Utopia. He said, wait a minute, I can find it for you. He said, we got to get a safe computer. And so we went into a room I couldn't look, and he looked at it, and he found it, said, this is where it is. He's not allowed, of course, just so everybody who pays taxes knows, he's not allowed to buy beer or anything like that for me, but he showed me where to get it. So by this time, though, I'm bitching all the way, because I'm on book tour, and I'm upset about it. And I happen to be in Boston bitching about not being able to find Utopia, and I'm in Boston at Sam Adams. And the phone in the studio rang, and it's the guy who makes Utopia. He said, tell Dr. Giovanni we are sending it down and the glass to drink it out of. So that was really nice of him. So I haven't drunk it yet because my book just came out on Tuesday.
Yeah, it's great. Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
So there are poems in it, but it's also, there's a memoir element, there are reflections. So back to the idea of how did you decide what to include in this and what's a poem?
Well, I don't really know it's a conscious thing like that. I think as a writer, it's more like what I won't include. Mm-hmm. And I'm really picky about whose story. And so one of the things I wanted to share with the audience, because I know some of us in this audience are older, and I know that the easiest thing to think is that our lives are insignificant or I'm not a writer. And you have to realize that your grandchildren, not to mention your great-grandchildren, have no idea of the life that you and I have led. That my granddaughter, who is 8, really, not really, does not know a landline. And so if I talk to her about, in the old days, the phone had a line on it, Kai is like, really, grandmother? Because she's used to iPhone, and what did your phone do in your day? Because you know how they're always doing your day. What did your phones do in your day? Could you look at movies? Are you kidding? I had a party line. I couldn't even talk. And we all have these sort of stories. Our kids don't know trains because they haven't had an opportunity to go across country on a train. And I'm really sorry they're no longer doing supersonic transport. But you start to think about the things that the kids don't know that we did, that this is what we had to do. Some of us walked to school, and that was a shock to them.
Right.
You mean Daddy didn't drop you off? And it's really amazing. So I'm always encouraging, especially the older generation, and if you're retired particularly, join a writing group.
Yeah.
Because even though you say to yourself, oh, I'm not going to get a bestseller or whatever, you have a story to tell, because one day, if you don't tell your story, who will? And a part of that story is that you fell in love, a part of it is that it didn't work and you got a divorce or you hated your, whatever it is, it doesn't matter what it is, it's your story. And it should be put down so that as we go on, when we think about 21, I mean, who would have thought that we would even see 2000?
Right.
And when you think about 21, 21 is only, what, 90 years away? Not quite.
Won't see it.
Many of us won't, but we have people that we're kin to who will. And they need to know what we saw in 2000. But we also, I am connected, my grandmother was born in 1895, but her mother was the free child of slave parents. We called her Mama Dear. Now, I knew Mama Dear. My mother and I argued about that because Mama Dear died when I was 4, and she said, Nikki, you cannot remember Mama Dear, but I do. And I won't even let my mother take my memories away from her. I remember because Mama Dear did peppermint. And she had a big, she loved it. She had a big barber pole.
What do you mean she did peppermint?
She ate it. I mean.
Right. Okay.
She ate it. And she had a little cobbler's hammer.
Right.
And I don't know why Mama Dear and Grandpapa both liked me. I really don't. I've begun exploring this. If there's another book, a part of it will be the exploration of that. But both of them liked me, and I think it's because of the grandchildren. I was a grandchild that didn't do anything. My sister was incredibly talented, and she could play the piano, and she sang, and she had dimples, and she was beautiful. And my cousins were boys, and they did boy things, and everybody was excited about that. And then there was Nikki. And I was just a kid in the corner always watching. And it was, I don't know, I think in many respects I probably led a lonely existence. You know, it doesn't bother me.
At that point, did you start? At what point did you start writing?
I didn't start writing until I was in high school. You know, because I enjoyed.
So you were just storing up those thoughts and.
Yeah, just watching stuff. But Mama Dear would say, she called me young'un. Come here, young'un, and I remember that so well. And she would take me. She kept her trunk. She didn't trust people, and she kept her trunk in her bedroom. And we had what was called a back porch. Anybody that's Southern knows a back porch. Mm-hmm. And everybody else's luggage is out on the back porch, but Mama Dear kept hers, and I remembered so well. I'm 4 years old when she died. And we would go in, I would follow her, and she would open up her trunk, and she had a barber pole. I don't know if you know the book. Yeah. And she would chip a piece off. And she treated me like I was, a puppy or something. She put it in my mouth. And I remember that so well.
Do you want to read anything from the book about your grandparents?
I can't read about Mama Dear because I was just sharing that. But I've been kind of working on, my father was an idiot, by the way. And he was. And I didn't, he was. I didn't write about Gus. We called him Gus. I didn't write about Gus because I had enough sense to know when I was younger, I was so angry with him that if I had written something, I would have made a judgment. And I wasn't old enough to make a judgment because it wasn't my story, if that makes sense. And so the craziness that he brought, he also loved. there's a writer, and I love her so much. She's such an incredible young woman, Edwidge Dadekut.
Oh, Dante.
And Edwidge wrote, I think one of the best, I think Edwidge is going to be the next American Nobelist, and she should be.
She's amazing.
And she wrote The Dew Breaker. And The Dew Breaker, if you haven't read it, is an incredible book, but it's about a man who tortures. And if any of you are Scandal fans, you know that it's incredible. And her father tortures. Now, her father also played the brother from another planet. So I have a bet going with a friend of mine that they're going to have to redeem this man, because we cannot have the brother from another planet being a mean man. So there has to be something. He's a great guy. But this, too, helped me understand my father didn't mean to be crazy. He just was. And it was the way that he loved us. He wasn't sick. He could hold a job and things like that. But there were these angers, and it would explode. And so there was nobody for it to explode on but us. I was 70. I mean, I'm writing this. I must have written this when I was 69, because this was really a new poem. And I realized that, again, I didn't want to make a judgment. Well, first of all, it wasn't mine to make. It was my mother. It was his to write. It was my mother's judgment to make. My next person to say something about it would have been my sister, but they're all gone, so it now has become my story. Chocolate cookies, chocolate cakes, chocolate fudges, chocolate lakes, chocolate kisses, chocolate hugs, 2 little chocolate girls in a chocolate rug. No one can find us, we're all alone. 2 little chocolate girls running from home. Chocolate chickens, chocolate bunnies, chocolate smiles from chocolate mommies, chocolate rabbits, chocolate snakes, 2 little chocolate girls wide awake. What an adventure, what fun. Me and my sister still on the run, still on the run, still on the run. Me and my sister still on the run.
Oh, that's beautiful.
I've been telling myself I quit crying when I read that. But, and I realize my father did not mean to do, he meant to do what he did, but he didn't mean it to come out the way that it came out. Does that make sense?
You mentioned that he was an alcoholic, right?
Oh, he was an alcoholic, yes. And I didn't have my first drink until after I had cancer. That's the truth. All of my life, I never drank. Well, that's probably one reason I don't drink beer. But after I had cancer, I said, I'm not dead. I may as well have. Excuse me. I'm sorry. I did. I had my first, and I said, I'm going to do it, because I collected wines, because I collect art and I collect things. And so I had, I don't know if there are any wine people in the room, but I had the occasion to buy a case of 48 Richburg. Yeah. So I bought it as an investment, because I knew I had a son, and I knew he had to go to college, and I thought, I'll sell that for $10,000 or so and never look back. And then I thought, I could drink it. So my sister and I drank it.
I just heard today that there's actually we're a short supply of wine, in the world, that they're underproducing wine, and maybe it's because you're drinking it too fast.
No, I think it's because the price fell.
Right.
And I was down in Argentina, and of course they're making incredible Malbecs. And I think that Europe, unless Europe has another big war, and I hate to say it like this, but the war really did help the grapes.
Right.
And so if we're willing to kill another couple of million people, we could probably get a vintage. I think it's probably pushing it just to have a good bottle of wine, you know what I'm saying?
Well, since you said that, one of the things that really makes you so extraordinary, in addition to how beautiful the poetry is, and is that you really are known to be political, an activist. How much of being a poet is about being an activist?
I think you have to care about something. And I had the really marvelous occasion, I think it's 3 years ago now, 4 years ago, I'm really losing track of time, to read with Seamus Haney. And it was really incredible, because to have the 2 of us on stage together was a lot of fun. Seamus is such a great guy. And again, he's political. I mean, people to say, I'm not political is to say you don't care about the world. And that doesn't mean I'm running for office or trying to get anybody reelected. I don't, campaign and stuff like that. I do complain sometimes, because I am, because I'm unhappy about, the shutdown was ridiculous. How do grown people not come to some conclusion? And we saw this.
But I think sometimes when people hear the word poetry, they think of something very sober, or something very intense, or something that is in a way detached from the world, and you've always been someone who is inextricable from, participating in the world and really being of it. So
I think it's true of all of them. I mean, that's why Shakespeare said, first we kill the poets and the lawyers, if you recall. No, I think we've always, the nature of the profession is that we try to be a truth teller. And we are not trying to run for office. I mean, I don't know when the last time, what's his name in Yugoslavia, was a poet.
Oh, yeah.
But mostly we don't. We just try to be good citizens. We try to be adults. And we try to pass along good tidings, but good tidings are not everything is going to be all right. This is not reggae. This is, what is that boy that, don't worry, be happy. No, no, if you're not worried today, you don't know what's going on. We've got to be. And I'm a big fan of America. I think that it's an interesting country, and I think it's a good idea, and I think that we need to, get this idea moving along. And I think that a lot of times people forget. People want to be afraid of something. They want to be afraid of the old are sucking up our resources, or the young are not doing this, or the blacks are not, doing their fair share, or we have too many foreigners, as if the whole damn nation isn't a foreign nation. So, I mean, it's so ugly, and I think unworthy of us. And when we look at the world, I'm a big fan of water, so being up here, we were looking today. I know that the water situation on Earth is an international problem. Mm-hmm. I'm a big fan of Prince Charles because I like his environmental stands and I like what he's trying to do about water. We know we have to do, it's a nation, it's an international thing about air. We have to do that. But transportation is an international situation. We have to solve that. Why do I have to fly, all over the world to get to Traverse City? I should be able to get on Calm Air in Cincinnati and fly right up here.
Right.
But I should.
Yeah.
Or better yet, there should be a solar train.
There you go. Yeah.
That takes me right up, yeah.
So what's your writing process like? I mean, when you sit down to write, what sparks your ideas for writing poetry? And do you run to the computer and do you write longhand?
No, I do write on the computer. I'm smiling because Joe Heller, who was a friend and I think a great loss, Catch-22.
Oh, Catch-22.
It's just, but Joe was such a great guy to always have a glass of wine with. He was just, a great guy. And Joe always said, I always have the last line. And I was just, talk to him because he was the big writer and I'm the poet, so no. And he would, Joe, what do you, he said, know my last line. Well, I almost pretty much always know my first.
Wow.
And so I'll have something in my head, and I'll say, oh, I wonder where it's going.
What's an example of that in the book?
Ooh, I don't know.
Well, what about...
Well, the example would be a love poem, but...
Oh, read us one.
You want a love poem? I like that. This is let me find it. No, I fell in love. And you know how... What's her name? Bonnie Raitt.
Raitt.
Yeah,
Right.
Nick of Time is
Right.
one of my favorite
I know,
records.
you love that.
I found love, baby, just in the nick of time. And, because you're busy and my life got turned upside down. I had a lot of things to do. And then, you see somebody and think, oh, isn't he cute? And there you do. And I laugh because everybody's married at my age. So, you have to go through, looking for somebody single, you won't find anybody. So, well, we can share. But it doesn't hurt.
So what are you going to read?
I'm going to read Still Life with Apron. I would like to see you cooking. I would like for you to cook for me. I would like to see you decide upon a menu. Go to the market and pick the fruit, the vegetables, the fish. I would like to see you smell the fish, test the fish for firmness and freshness. I would like to watch you in the bakery by the dinner rolls, deciding, rolls or crusty bread. I would watch you run back to get the goat butter. I would like to be sitting in a corner and you, intent upon your meal, not noticing me. When you go to the wine store, I would watch you wrestle with red or white. White, of course, because it's fish, but red is seductive. Whoever fell in love over a glass of white wine? I, uncharacteristically on time, would like you to greet me in a butcher's apron. I would like to watch you greet me only in an apron.
I love that.
You would ask me to undress to undress for you. Before I sit down at the beautiful table, before you hand me my glass, you would ask me to undress. I would like to watch you watch me undressing for you. I would like to watch the movement inside the apron as I undress for you. I would like to watch you walk, no, stroll to your closet, where you bring out your old buffalo plaid dressing gown, your pilly, much-washed dressing gown that smells like you, after you brush your teeth, after you shower, after you comb your hair. I would like to embrace your odor, your essence, as we sit down to eat. I would like for you to cook for me. I would like that very much.
Wow. Love that. So, when was that poem written?
Recently.
Recently. And did you have someone in mind?
Yeah, I have someone, yes.
Okay. So you had the first line in mind, and then.
Well, I wanted him to cook for me.
What? And did he?
Well, that gets to be my story.
Okay.
But I did. I know he cooks, and I realized I had a poem.
Oh.
You always do that. That's the bad thing about poets. You know, we do these things, then it's like, that would be a really good poem. So, you know, you didn't particularly want his wife to read it, but
She'll never know.
probably.
There is a lot of food in this book. A lot of food. You're a food lover.
We're food lovers, yeah. The whole family.
So when did you first realize that food could be the subject of a poem?
Oh, we're all foodies. Grandmother, Mama Dear was not. And Mama Dear just didn't, well, she wasn't a very trusting person. And so there are no stories in the family about Mama, and I mentioned Mama Dear earlier. Right. There are no stories in the family about Mama Dear cooking.
But your other grandmother there.
But grandmother, Mama Dear was my great-grandmother.
Right.
But grandmother was an incredible cook. And she and I cooked together. And my mother is a good country cook. And she and I cooked together. My sister, and by the way, Jeannie Evans is someplace in here, and you must say hello to me because I haven't seen you in forever and ever. And Jeannie Evans is a friend of my sister's that went to Wyoming High together. But my sister is a fancy cook. So Gary was the one that, if you wanted the cake, and this was it, you know.
Right.
And when we had people, until they finally moved, it's a longer story to that, but I finally took a job. And Virginia Tech recruited me, and I went to Virginia Tech, which is in Virginia. Mommy and I were living in Cincinnati, and Mommy said she didn't want to move to Virginia. And so that was that. And I said, well, you know, I'm going, and this is what's going to happen. You know, we need to do something. So she said, I'd like to move to California, because I've always wanted to live in California. So, okay, fine. So she moved to California. Gary was living in Seattle, but Gary moved to San Francisco. So now we're dog people. So now we have Mommy and Gary, and Mommy has 2 dogs, and Gary has 2 dogs, right? And then we have me, and I have 1. And I'm here. My son Thomas lives in upstate New York, and my sister's son lives in Hawaii, right? So as we got older, Mommy lived in California about 10 years. As we got older, we spent Christmas in California. And so they said to me, we need to talk. The 3 of us need to talk because we need to be together. I agree. We need to be. I want it to be. And I said, okay, that's fine. Why don't you all move to Virginia? And they said, no, we want you to move to California, and we're going to have a vote on it, right?
That wasn't going to be your story.
And we decided to have a vote. Thomas was there, so Thomas is going to vote with me, of course. But Christopher, my sister's son, is going to vote with her. So we got Mommy, Christopher, and Gary, and that's the 3 of them, and against Thomas and me, right? And so the vote is going to go California. Except that I had a dog, she's since passed, named Wendy. And Wendy was the alpha dog. So when we took the first vote, it was 3-2. And I said, wait a minute, there's more involved than just us. You know, the dogs ought to have something to say about this. And so they were laughing. I said, Wendy, the dogs are going to vote with you, aren't they? And she, roof, roof. And so all of the dogs came over and sat with Wendy. So
that's a great story.
We carried the day, and they all moved to Virginia.
Now,
it was wonderful.
Now, Virginia Tech, which you love,
I do.
had in 2007 had terrible thing happen, and you actually had the shooter in your class, and then afterwards you were asked to give a convocation. So can you tell us a little bit about what that felt like? And
Well, I was in Los Angeles the night before. I'm never on campus on Monday, by the way. I taught Mr. Cho, and I did put him out of my class because he was not, he wasn't going to be taught by me. He was not cooperating, and it just wasn't working. And I don't have ego like that. And so I went to my department head, Lucinda Roy at that time, and I said to Lucinda, you know, he's got to go. This doesn't work. And she said, well, you know, we're here to teach. I said, well, Lucinda, we put it another way. Either you take Mr. Cho out of my class or on Thursday, because that was a Tuesday. The next thing that'll be on your desk on Thursday will be my resignation. I'm not going to walk into the classroom with this young man anymore. I found him to be evil. I've said that. I've been consistent in that. I don't think he was crazy. I think he was evil. And if you've ever if you've ever been in a position to feel something is evil, you have an idea. But that was 2 years before, you know, the shooting. I was in California when the night before, and it was one of those something tells me. And something said, you need to go home. And so we started flying home, but it was a windy day. And when we being just the airplane, got to Charlotte, we couldn't get up because the winds were too bad. So we got to Charlotte, you know, you may not, I don't mean it like that, but the overnight gets into Charlotte at 6 o'clock. Right. So you can take the 7:15 and you're home. But we couldn't get out. And so we're now being held in Charlotte just trying to get home. So nobody knew, because you don't get information in an airport. And so nobody knew. And we flew up. We finally just got, you know, it was like, let's go. And the people that were going up to Blacksburg jumped on the plane. I was sitting, and I'll never forget that, I was sitting in 13. And as we landed, you know, the kids all have those things, cell phones.
right.
And one of the young ladies, she was sitting about 11, said, oh my God, there's been a shooting. And at that point, she said, 12 people have been shot. And everybody on the plane that was grown, all of us, said, no, sweetheart, it must be one or two. There was some mistake. And by the time we walked, coming across that plane doesn't connect, it's an old fashioned. And so coming across the tarmac, you know, the wind was that strong, you know, we couldn't get helicopters up. It's one of the reasons that we lost some people, because we couldn't put a helicopter in the air. And we had to transport people, and that was incredibly sad. But we finally got in. When we got into the station, of course, at that point, CNN was on, you know, the TVs were on, and it was 21, and then it started going up. Normally, I go home on Smart Bus because it costs $1. I'm not cheap, but that's, you know. And it's right there, and I walk out. It's a mile from my house, so I get to walk home. And I ran down, and it was like, I need to be home. And so I ran and got one of the last rental cars, because at that point, everything was coming in. So I had, I don't know, I think a Honda, something that you would never drive, because it was like chugging along, you know what I'm saying? And I really wanted to be home. And WDBJ shot by me, and that's our locals, and it just went shoo. And I was like, oh, this is really, really bad. And I was trying to I have Sirius radio, so I'm used to being able to, you know, I could have punched in, you know, 122, and but now I'm on an AM station, right? And I couldn't get I couldn't get us, VTU. I couldn't get us. I couldn't get Radford. So I don't know if anybody's ever been in a coup, but it felt like a coup. It felt like, you know, something is
right.
And I kept turning down, and I finally got, it's called ROCK, R-O-C-K, Rock of Virginia. And they had someone in the hall on the radio, and that's how the information was coming. So, you know it was really bad. When I don't actually live in Blacksburg, well, when I got to the Blacksburg turnoff, the police had already stopped it, so you could not, nothing was going into Blacksburg. So I went on home, and I have 5 televisions, so they all went on different stations. Of course, my phone, we have 3 lines that come into the house, and so my phone was ringing. And, you know, just picking up the phone. It was a terrible, terrible thing. And it was one of those, and I just said to myself, I called my friend John Bryant, whom you have no way to know, but John called, he lives in Cincinnati, and he said, are you okay? I said, John, I know who's doing this. I really do. And he said, you know, you should be careful what you say. I said, no, I shouldn't be careful what I say. I know who's doing this. And it turned out it was Mr. Cho. I mean, you just knew it. And so, you know, now we're on the phone. You know, newspaper people are crazy. And so they are coming to my home, and we won't even go into how do they know where you live, and the dog is going crazy, and people are in your bushes, you know, knocking on your door and things like that, and I didn't know enough to talk to them, but the phone rang about 7:30, something like that, and it was Sandy Smith, who was Dr. Steger's secretary. She said, Nikki, we need you to anchor convocation. And of course, the answer to that is yes.
And so what did you say, or what message did you think needed to be communicated?
I thought we needed to be reminded who we are. And I was upset for a lot of reasons. And one of the reasons that a kid I loved an awful lot got killed, and faculty members that I knew. And it was very sad. And so I knew that I could not stand on stage and do what I'm now doing. I knew I had to write it.
Right.
And I'm pretty good on my feet. I mean, you've been talking, I know what I think. But I just didn't want to take a chance on standing in front of Virginia Tech and breaking down. So I wrote it. But it's still a very sad moment for us. I didn't realize, thank God, that I was on an international hookup. And when I got home, a friend of mine called me from Japan. And I was like, oh my God, how did that happen? If I had known I was on the international hookup, I probably would have, and George Bush was there. And Laura and them. And, I've known important people. So that it wasn't, I wasn't trying to address the president either, because I thought if I get involved in anything, it'll be ugly.
Right.
Because I'm not a Bush person. So, I'm not.
But about that event, and I can't remember whether I read it or I heard you say it, but you talk about how killing is the opposite of the act of creation, obviously.
It is.
But you were so eloquent on that point.
No, I just said we are Virginia. I mean, what I wanted to convey and what I wanted to share, and as I said, I was speaking for Virginia Tech. I mean, this is a school I love, and these were people that I know. We are not who is dead, and we are not who is killing. We are the people that have to go forward, and we are sad. I mean, that was a line, of all of the poems that I've done, and I don't remember a lot of my lines, we are sad today, and we are going to be sad. And people like me are, you see, it's been a year, and I didn't know you were going to ask me about her, but I'd probably ask you not to. But it's not something you get over.
Right.
And of course, the kids that are with us now don't know it.
Right.
And so the kids that are with us now go on, and our job is to be strong and go on for them. But even if we're talking about it with them, I don't cry all the time, but there are a couple of things that make me cry. And my father's craziness and the death of Virginia Tech is another one. These are just, it happens. Hell, people cry, so you get over it. It does.
Well, you talked about being 70, 71, and it being really the best time of your life in some ways. And I just love how you talk about that. So can you tell us a little bit about how you're...
Growing old is a really good idea. And one of my favorite, it is, one of my very favorite birthday cards, and I give it a lot, so I've probably given it to people that I've given it to before, but they don't want to tell me. But it says, on the outside, it says, birthdays are good for you. And when you open it up, it says, statistics show that the people who have the most live the longest. I love it. I really love it. It's been fun, and one of the things that I like about Tech, too, because I think that when Tech recruited me, they didn't necessarily know what they were getting. And, they were like, we need a writer, and somebody said, well, why don't you try Giovanni, But I really like who we are, and I like how we've grown. And for me, it's so important, since I am there, one of the things that we know is that we have to get the kids to travel. Mm-hmm. And travel, and it doesn't mean you know what you're doing. One of the things I'm trying to do with the National Science Foundation right now is I want them to let me take 6 writers and 2 undergraduates to Antarctica. I went to Antarctica last year. And Wow. It was just an incredible trip. My Aunt Agnes, who's the one who's left, Ag called me, and Ag was 89 when she called. And she said, Nikki, I've been to every continent except Antarctica. Wow. I said, Ag, you're 89. If we don't go soon, it won't be looking good. So it takes a year because you can only go down during December. Right. You're not, because it's frozen down there. We weren't red-shirted, so we're not, down with the polar bears, and we're just going to be in the Falklands, and we're going to be able to walk on. And it was icy, it was right. Cold but not freezing. We went out to the rookery, and she was afraid of that. She's like, it's 5 miles to the Penguin Rookery. I said, well, Ag, if If you don't make it, you'll either have a heart attack and freeze to death, or, I'll pick you up and have your body taken back. It'll be fine. So we always laugh. But it was a wonderful trip. And in dealing with the president of our university, of Virginia Tech, is an architect. And I really want him to go, because we haven't had any writers in Antarctica at all. We have scientists and we've had photographers. So we need to send the writers down. We need the poets, the critics, the novelists, the children. So we need people to go. But we also could benefit, which he and I were just talking just before I came on this tour. And I'm saying to him, Dr. Steger, you have to go, because we need the architects to go down to say, and what will we build in the future? We don't have any architects down there. What is the future going to look like on Antarctica? Because whatever we're going to find in Antarctica is what we're going to find in Mars. And we can't just keep putting those tents up there and temporarily saying it's okay.
Right.
And so we're having this discussion. My other part of my discussion, I laugh, with the National Science Foundation is, and we'll need 4 cases of wine. You just can't take writers down there without wine. So we get to stop.
Red or white? Yeah. I know.
Red. Real wine.
No one fell in love over white wine.
It'll be, no, we really do. And, we just right there in Santiago. So that's easily enough. Send it down to the Falklands, and then we'll pick it up and take it over. So that in the evening, because that's what writers do. We're going to get up. Well, we're there at midnight sun, so it's no morning. But we'll be up at 6 o'clock because the scientists are up and out. We will find whoever it is we like, because now, NSF is people with the beds. But we'll find people and we'll go out with them and we'll see what's there. The whales will not be at home, as you know, because they'll be up in California then. But we'll get to sort of see what it is that, I don't know what we'll learn, but I know enough to know that you don't have to know everything in order to learn it. That was a bad sentence, wasn't it?
I think everyone
I work at a research institution, so the research institutions always want to say, we want to find out how A equals B equals C. But we are the creative end of a research institution. And one of our greatest presidents has been a creator, because architecture is not a science, it's an art. And you hire the scientists. That's what you have the vision, and then you tell the guy who puts the plumbing in, he's the scientist, or who puts the electricity in. But you're the one that says, I want the building to be 120 stories high. That's a dream. You see what I'm saying? And so taking him as an artist and taking us as artists, and we sit, of course, Dr. Steger actually drinks scotch, so we'll take scotch for him. It's the first thing I learned about anybody is what they drink. Because that way you have something that you can talk to them about.
Right.
And if they have a dog.
And if you have a dog.
I have a dog. Everybody I know, we're all dog people. I have one friend who's a cat person, and we like her, but...
I've always wanted to ask you, at what stage did you feel confident enough about what you were doing to say, if someone asked you, I'm a poet?
1968, when I published my first book.
And what was that feeling? What was that like?
That's who I am. And I'm lucky because I was a poor kid. My father's poor. And, we weren't starving or something, but we were poor. And I had enough sense to know, oh, we're poor and they're not. So, you get that. So I knew that I couldn't define myself based on money because I was a poor kid. If I did that, I'd be crazy and unhappy with myself. And I didn't want to be either crazy or unhappy with myself. So what I am and what I accrue unto myself, as it were, is 2 different things. So luckily, I have been able to earn a living with poetry, but I've been just as happy to earn a living dusting. I'm a real good duster. And no, I live with I am. I'm really, you don't know that, but I am. And when I lived with my grandmother, the way that I made spending money, because grandmother and grandpapa were both retired, they didn't have a lot of money either. I mean, we weren't starving, but if I needed something, I needed to find a way to earn a living. I cleaned the house for her friends. But I did such a beautiful job. I was really because they only had to do one person's, and I would have the glasses, because they are all a part of the era of segregation. And I have, again, this is something that I don't want to live forever, but I want to be able to write about this, because those black women were club women. All of them were club women. But we didn't have Holiday Inns or Hyatts, or we didn't have restaurants that would let you meet. So all of the women always had to be prepared to have a club meeting in their house. So they had crystal, they had silver, they had, beautiful plates. And so I would go in and arrange the glasses, with the stems and stuff, so that they're top shelves, and I also polished the shelves. And we had a little closet, what do you call it, like a flower closet, where you kept all of that. And I would actually wax the floor, and it was just like really, so I did a good job. And so they would pay me, and then I had some spending money and do something. So if the poetry hadn't paid any money, I would still enjoy reading it and sharing it and doing whatever I could do, but I could also start Nikki's cleaning service. And I'd be franchised out, and I'd probably be a lot richer right now.
What, given what you were just talking about, segregation and, the history of our country, how did you feel the night Obama was elected?
I was happy for him, and I am. And I'm a Democrat, and as opposed to, what's his name, McClain. So I didn't have, I had a lot of hope, and I was happy for, as I say, people tried to say, or tried to ask, do you think Martin Luther King would be happy? I don't know what Martin would be happy about, but Martin wasn't a politician, he was a leader. And I've been just slightly disappointed that this president has not been a leader. He has wanted to be a politician. And when you look at just this thing we're fighting about right now, we're fighting about health care. Well, the exact same votes for health care that he got, he could have had the second day he was in office. And to me, that's what leadership is supposed to be. Just go ahead and do it. And Barack kept trying to make them like him. They're never going to like him. And to have people sitting there bitching, I do not understand. I don't understand how anybody cannot want everybody to have health care. I don't understand it. And, when you consider that poor people take care of rich people, whether it's in the hospital, whether it's handling your Burger King, whatever it is, I do not want people handling my food or my body to be sick. It's so basic. Yep. And so the first thing you want is them to be well. If anybody on earth is well, you want your nurses, your people that take care of your old people, you want them well. So what the hell is this? Let them get their shots or their blood pressure pills or whatever the hell it is and be happy and well. It just so makes sense to me. And so I've been a little disappointed that we have all these pissing contests going on, but I've also, been disappointed that the president has not led, because there's probably not 5 people in the world that can tell you why this bill, the Affordable Care Act, is important. You afford it, but we haven't had the leadership that says this is what we have to do. And now we found out that we're sending drones, which is despicable. You can't kill people with drones. You can't kill people. And so nobody expected the war to be going on in the same way. You can't. And now we realize we're listening in on, that's why anything I have to say, I say it on stage. So somebody says, oh, she's going with a married man. Hell yeah. The hell with the beach. Otherwise, you look around, National Enquirer is doing something.
Speaking of that, you're an active Twitter.
No.
Is that a fake account?
No, I don't do any of that stuff.
Oh, because I looked you up and it seemed like there were a lot of tweets from Nikki Giovanni.
No, not from me. I don't know who's from.
Wow, really? That's funny. Because I was actually thinking.
I don't actually know how to. Oh, I know. When this book came out, Rachel asked me if I would. I thought it was a blog.
No. No, there are tweets. And what I was thinking how great it was, because basically what's being tweeted out from your account are excerpts from poems, your poems. And it's a great way of sending out little passages from your poems.
That's nice.
Yeah, and you have a lot of followers. So
I don't do it.
Okay. Live and learn.
I don't do it.
I have a special request about the last poem that if you on page 51. I am at that point.
Oh, okay.
A poem I love, and then we're going to take questions.
Oh, certainly. This is a love poem. I love them, though. I am at that point in life when I reread old books, bake my mother's favorite recipes, snuggle with a sneezy quilt, listen to my old rock and roll records, feel comfortable and comforted in my old, nearly ragged bathrobe. I am keeping my house shoes with the holes in the bottom, though I no longer wear them. And yes, the smell is long gone from that bottle of joy, which still sits on my bathroom dresser. Embracing old things is a good new thing, like kissing you again, and not really paying attention to whether or not the Redskins score.
I love that. You worked so many beautiful images and feelings into that one poem, and you got the Redskins in there too.
Well, yeah, and they need to change their name, but
Right.
we do watch them. They're going to have to change their name because it's embarrassing now. But no, a lot of this is food, and a lot of this is love, and love and food go together because people that you cook for and who cook for you, you know. My son, and this then.
And then we'll take questions.
But Thomas is, by the way, is a very good cook. And when my father had a stroke, we moved back. I moved back home, and he moved with me. And Wendy moved also. So now we're in Cincinnati, and there's a lot to do. When your father has a stroke, my mother was not going to do well. Ultimately, she's going to have pneumonia and be in the hospital. So I am being a bit overwhelmed. And so I said to Thomas, I think that your responsibility is you have to cook at least one day a week. You can do this. And of course, that meant my responsibility is to eat it, right? So not a problem. But when Gus came home, and my father never had a son, so Thomas was a great gift to him. Right. And so for Father's Day, Thomas said, Mommy, I'm going to cook for Grandpapa. I said, fine, that's wonderful. He said, can you take me to the store? Yes. So I took him I took my hand, he bought it. So he decided he was going to boil a chicken. And I don't know why, and he made his dinner and he boiled the chicken. He forgot to put the salt in it.
Oh.
So he fixed the chicken, and it really looked pretty, by the way, and he had these vegetables, and we sliced it. And of course, boiled chicken without salt is kind of like cardboard. And the one time that I admired my father, he said to Thomas, it's so nice that you didn't put salt knowing that I was sick. And we ate it. And it's what saved Gus for me. Because it brings tears to my eyes. But that was the sweetest thing he ever said. He would never have said something to Gary or me like that. He wouldn't.
Yeah, I know
But
exactly
it
what
was
you
the
mean.
nicest thing, because we all had to eat that chicken because Thomas was.
Well,
He knew something was wrong, and so Gus was the one that said, no, I know you did it for me. Oh, it was,
well,
yeah.
this book is really, really wonderful. It's so filled with, warmth and family and food and feeling and love and lust. And it's, it really gives you a sense of who you are. And so, anyway, I've enjoyed getting to talk to you, and I've enjoyed the book. So I think now we have 15 or 20 minutes worth of questions, and we would just ask that when we call on you, you stand up and, hi Roger, tell us who you are. And happy Halloween. We got Tigger in the front row.
Oh my goodness, yes.
Tigger.
Pooh Bear. Tigger. That's great. I quit giving candy. I did. I got worried because so many crazy people. And the kids come to your door. Actually, I went, and I'm not mean, but I finally got police tape. I'm not home this year, so nobody's there. But I got police tape last year and put it, because hell, kids disappear. And you don't want somebody to say, the last time I saw them, they were going to Nikki's. I didn't know.
Yikes. Yeah. Any questions?
Hi.
Hi there.
My name's Maya. I am 15. I aspire to be a Black historian in my life. I just wanted to know your perspective. I research a lot in the Black nationalist movement, not so much in the Black civil rights movement, because that's covered by teachers already, because they have to have it in curriculum. Anyway, what does it mean to you from different perspectives in different movements in the past that you've seen, and now in 2013, what does it mean to you being Black?
What does it mean to you being black?
Well, black is who I am. I mean, I thought there was something, I thought she said something about history, and I'm
Yeah, she wants to be a
Maya,
an
you have a very
historian.
famous name there, Maya. What can we rephrase? I'm sorry. Okay.
I know. So through history, like we know about history so far, but what now makes it important to be black? Like we know that there was segregation, we know that there was the black nationalist movement, we know that Martin Luther King Jr. had the I Had a Dream speech, we know all of these things happened, but now how is it important for us to...
It's incredibly important to, one, know history, because to know, I mean, you say Martin's name, and we know that there was a march on Washington, and we're celebrating the 50th anniversary, and we know that, you might not know, but this is the 100th anniversary of Delta Sigma Theta sorority, which was an incredibly important anniversary because they are the ones who joined the suffragette movement, therefore helping black people get the vote. But you say, what's important about being black? Nothing. What's important about being white? Nothing. It's what we decide to make of what we are and how we decide to bring that together. I don't think that you can say, we know this happened. You know, we have to say, how do we use what has happened? Am I? Mm-hmm. And I think it's kind of important. I'm a history buff, and so the other thing, we're talking about food and love, but even the love poems, there's a lot of history. So I'm a big history buff because we're always learning something new as we look at the same events. We learn more and more and more about ourselves and about what it is. And a part of, I mentioned it earlier, but a part of the great story of America is not some of the sadness, but how we begin to fight through some of that. So in 1619, for example, a Dutch man of war sailed up the James River and traded 19 Negroes for fresh water. So that already tells you something like, oh, you know, why didn't they just give them the water and take the Negroes and go on? But no, something says we want these people here. We don't get the Pilgrims until 1620. So every time somebody white tells me about they're American and I'm not, I don't want to hear it. I was here before. And that's true. And the labor that I put in has helped this country to grow. If we were mature, I wrote a poem in here, Fear, Eat In or Take Out. I think fear should be a spice. And I think that we should wake up in the morning and shake it in our eggs or put it in our fruit mix or do something else with it. Because it's not fear that's the problem, it's hatred. And hatred is easily identified, and it's time that we got rid of hatred. It's true. And again, your generation, you know, because you're younger, we're having more and more communication with each other. And I did mention, there was a time, I mentioned that's why I want to write about the club women, because a lot of people don't know the club women. But you do know that during segregation, a lot of people are not thinking, oh dear, that means that the black women could not have their bridge club as they can now, and as we do now. Do you see what I'm saying? And all of that becomes important as we say, we would like to see a better world. You know, and I travel a lot, and I'm a big fan, and I'm at a school, and Dr. Steger will have a fit if he hears this, but tech is rich. And since they're rich, I like to try to spend their money. And I do. And I want us to keep taking kids. We have an outreach all over the world. We have a campus in Sri Lanka. We have people that we send into Africa and to Ghana particularly. I'm going back to Ghana next year. And we're now getting a commitment from Virginia Tech to take 2 undergraduates with me so that we can begin to see. We have a villa in Riva San Vitale in Switzerland, in the Italian part of Switzerland, and we take 32 students there. And it was very important to me that those 32 students look like America. I didn't want 32 white students. I don't want 32 black students. I don't want 32 men or 32 women. I want the mixture so that every time we move, when we get on our bus, we have a bus over there, but we also sometimes take the train. People know that we're American because they look at us. And we look like Americans. And that is the best. And I want that's what I want when the world looks at America. I want them to say, yeah, that's what America looks like. I don't want them to look at the Tea Party. I don't want them to look at that fool Ted Cruz from Texas setting the government down because of some foolishness. I want them to look at the future and the hope. And that's what we are, yeah.
All right. Do we have any other questions? Could you stand up? Okay.
Hi, my name is Michaela. I'm from the Interlochen Arts Academy. I'm a creative writer, and the biggest thing as a poet that you struggle with is, what do you write that will be important to the people that hear or read it? And I guess my question is, what advice would you give to our generation and the future generation to change, to make that big change? Because sometimes you lose hope seeing in the news these bad things and the government and all those things, and I've lost hope, and so I want to write things and share them that will change and help the next generations to come. So
How do you know? How do you know what will change and help the next generation? How do you know? All you can know is what helps and changes you. Honestly, I mean, I know it's not the answer you want. I'm really sorry. I'm always a disappointment. I was attacking, T.D. Jakes the other day, too, in the black audience, and they were like, oh, Reverend Jakes is a nice guy. No, he's not. He's a hater. But he is, but that's another discussion. But you're saying, I want to do something important. I'm saying, how do you know? Only thing you know is that right now you're alive, and you know that one day you won't be. So between now and then, what you have to do is live. And you have to live, and you have to be who you think you are, because you can't deal with who somebody else. I mean, look at all these crazy people we're dealing with who are trying to impress other people. And you have to sometimes wonder, what the hell is wrong with them? And no, really, I mean, it bothers you. And I don't think, and especially writers, sweetheart, and I know that this is not doing you any good. You say, oh, God, I'm so sorry I said something to that woman. But writers have to be true to themselves. Otherwise you want to go to MFA program, and they will take everything that's interesting out of what you're saying, and you'll have this little book that nobody cares about, and excuse me. You have to, I'm sorry, I won't get invited back, but you can't worry about who's going to be impressed or not impressed. If you want to do that, you need to run for office or start a business, because then you know what you're doing. If you're a writer, all you can know is that this is the truth as you understand it. That's all you can do. And all you can do is be that was the other question. You have to maximize the truth as you understand it. You have to trust yourself. Most of your generation is really pitiful. And no, you are. I can't imagine. I was a little kid, and one of the people I remember, and Jeannie's here, one of the people I remember, but when I went to St. Thomas School, Rose Stinson didn't like me. And she's one of the few people, because most people didn't pay any attention to me. And one day, whatever she did, she pushed me. And I knew that I would die and go to hell before I was going to let that girl push me. And I hit her back. Now, Rose was bigger than I was, so I'm going to get beaten up. But I gave her what for, because I said, I'm not going to let Rose Stinson bully me. I can't imagine that somebody is actually sitting there reading something that somebody has written about them, that they then go and commit suicide. If I had a child to commit suicide, they damn well better be dead, because if they weren't, I would kill them. After all, you know how much trouble we go through to have you? It hurt. All of that stuff about, oh, it was so lovely. No, damn it, it hurt. And we pushed you out, and you were just little and ugly and red and squiggled up, and we tried to act like, oh, this is all right. And then we take care of you, and we feed you, and we try to tell you how wonderful we are, and you kiss your little stomach and wipe your little behinds, and then some bitch you don't even know says something, and you kill yourself? What the hell is that? You have no right to die.
All right.
You have no right.
We have time for one more question.
And I just want to say that to you. You got to be who you are, because you have to think of the people who love you. You can't you just can't let other people, oh my. The lady right here. No, the lady right here, because she's been standing up forever.
Dr. Giovanni, thank you so much for coming to Northern Michigan. My name's Karen Nemechek. I teach at Petoskey High School. And I have a question about your writing process. At what point do you allow a poem to be finished? At what point do you know a poem is finished and it can take on its own life, whether it's in a book or whether it's on your desk or whether you share it with someone?
Yeah, some of them, I have an empty file, and it's called New Book. right now. Actually, it has a name right now. But when I'm having ideas, I'm just kind of sticking them in that. You know it's finished when you don't have anything to add. But I push things. And so if you're reading any of my work, you see that I can get very, very, very dense because I go to bump, and then I remember, oh, the bump, and then I remember, oh, the bump, you know. And I keep going around and around. I don't mind doing that. I don't mind putting that on me. Because again, if somebody doesn't like it, what can I do about it? All I can do is my best work. And the woman that I wrote for is dead. And I wanted my mother to like my work. But I know enough about my mother to know even if she didn't, she would have always said that. She always said, oh, you know, I always knew you were smart. I'm always proud of you. And I think the only thing that she got upset about, and it was really funny, I was nominated for a Grammy and I didn't get it. And she really, really got upset with the Grammy people. And I was like, Mommy, you know, what's his name? The senator won that year.
Which senator?
Yeah. And so I didn't win, you know, but I went out and I looked good, and talk about food, good caviar out there, good champagne. But Mommy was very upset, but she wasn't it wasn't like I didn't do something. It's like, what is wrong with those people? I mean, it was like, but the woman I wrote for is gone. And so all I do is, and that's why we got Chasing Utopia. All I do is remember the woman I loved. And this is who I want to please. And the rest of us, if you do, I'm happy. And if you don't, I understand. But my job was set out a long time ago. And so I do what I'm supposed to do. Yeah.
Do we have time for one more question? Okay, one more.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir. Yes.
Been an educator for over 40 years in Flint, Michigan. I've had the opportunity to go to Ghana twice and to visit schools there. I am concerned about the importance in the eyes of and the minds of many American school children about education. I find that African children embrace education, or at least the ones I visited with, valued it much more than American children. Are you also concerned about that?
No. There are too many different kinds of literacies. And as I said, Kwame Alexander, who is my former student and fellow Hokie now, does the LEAP program in Ghana. And of course, what we're talking about is a very small number of the students who are available to go to school. There are many different kinds of literacies. And I think one of the things that the kids like you all, if we can get you out of yourself long enough to recognize that you're all right, you're looking at things differently, and you're looking, I mean, Twitter, I don't tweet, I don't blog, I don't Facebook. I do answer my phone sometimes if I see the number and I recognize it. I had that phone for my mother, and she no longer calls that way. So it's very hard, that's the truth, very hard to get me on the phone because that's the only reason I had it. I think that American kids are on to something. And I think that one of the things we as older people are trying to do is to let them have it. So what I'm trying to say to you is what I just said. I just gave a harangue to you about what you owe to the future. But I'm not saying that, you know, you have to read it this way, you have to write it this way, I'm saying you have to believe in yourself. Because whatever is coming in the future, the American kids are leading it. The world wants to be an American kid. And you're saying, well, maybe the American kids don't know that. Maybe they don't, but they have to have access to that, which is why they must travel. If your mother says to you, what do you want for Christmas? Tell her a passport. You must have a passport. Go get your yellow fever shot now. Because once they go with us to places like Ghana, to Sri Lanka, once they go with us even to Riva San Vitale, because the Swiss, as you know, are privileged people, and they begin to see different things, then they know what it is that they're beginning to do. Something new is coming. And I'm a futurist, so I'm incredibly excited about it. I think that the kids are okay. I think that what they're bringing to us is something we're not used to, and they're bringing it in a way that we're not used to them bringing it. So we're saying, and we do, we would like for you to sit down sometime and shut the hell up. But at other times, we want to encourage you to find out what it is that you're doing. The young lady that wants to do it, you have to read the old books. You have to know, when we mention Joe Heller, you have to have some idea of what we're talking about. But you also have to read Shakespeare, for God's sake. How can you not? And as you do these things, then you bring to bear what you're doing. You also have to find people who like you. You must do that. You must find the old ladies, the old gentlemen. You must do that. And I am at a school that we were until we lost to Duke, number 14 in football in the country. We just dropped out. I'm a big fan of athletics because it's a good thing for the young men to learn leadership as it is for the young women. So we have athletics as a way of doing things. I say to my students, and I'm teaching 3 of our starters next year, I'm saying to them, I really don't, and I don't. I don't care if you win or not, because if I had my way, which I won't, if I could sit on the board of the NCAA, I would divide the money, because the team that loses is just as important as the team that wins. They can't win unless somebody loses. So let's divide the money and let the kids play. I think that that's incredibly important. I do. So no, I'm not scared. I'm not worried about the kids, and I'm not scared of them. But I also, since I'm mentioning things that get on my nerves, we've got to stop this gun culture. It's just a bad idea. And everybody just can't have a gun shooting people. It's just a bad idea. We can do better than that. Because first of all, we're going to die anyway. People kill you thinking they've done something. What the hell is, I mean, if somebody shoots me, the last thing I'm going to say is, you ain't done nothing, if I may quote Stevie Wonder, because I was going to die any damn way. Go do something that might not have happened. And we have to quit worshiping things like that. We have to quit acting like that's a creative thing. Somebody needs to talk to Hollywood, because every damn thing can't be somebody sticking their thingies. First of all, getting a kiss on your neck is really quite nice, but not if you're thinking there's some werewolf coming after you. Some crap.
Well, on that note.
On that note.
Thank you, Nikki.
Thank you. Thank you very much.